Hey, Michael. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Elisha, for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Beautiful. Me too, So excited to have you on the show. And you see, Michael, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two main things. And I do this so often because I feel like it is important. So, firstly, Michael, I want to say thank you for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you invested in yourself. And oftentimes, Michael, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, there was this tall, unattractive mango tree. And I use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it. But you see, Marco, just recently I was on that same road, and this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance, and immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me. Because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. It looks so beautiful. It was a special moment that day. I was so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Marco that we know today, that alone has made it really impossible for me to say no to you. And you see, when I was reading a little bit about you, I was attracted to all of the beautiful things I was seeing. Your work, your insights, your philosophy, and the impact what you're doing is having. It's so marvelous, it's so great. And here we are today with the amazing Marco. So thank you so very much for being here and thank you for investing in yourself. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So let's get started. See, I'm quite excited to have you on the show today, Marco, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, I believe it takes the application of knowledge. And not just knowledge, but the application of it. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness means ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the amazing Marco on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, Marco, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So these folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So to get started, Michael, let's start with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or professional journey. Right now we're just so curious. We want to know how Michael got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some really beautiful questions for you. Okay, Michael, over to you.
Okay. Well, as I said, thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Michael Watson. I am a professionally qualified social worker, and I've been a professionally qualified social worker for over 30 years. Now, I became I've become very skilled and experienced at giving evidence. And there's a reason that I've become that way. Many years ago, when I first became qualified, or I was first a qualified social worker, I took on a case. It was a case involving a little child. The little child was 3 years old, and her parents. So I had to work with this child and her parents. But it became very clear to me very soon that I didn't like working with the family. I was happy to work with the little child, but I didn't like working with the family because the family detested me. And I was young and I was inexperienced and I wanted to be liked. That was a big weakness for me because I wanted to be liked. And not everyone likes you. But I had no option. I had to work with the family because I was a social worker. Now, I would go to the house, the flat, and they wouldn't speak to me. The little girl was the only person that looked like they wanted to speak to me, but unfortunately she couldn't speak. The parents would ignore me, and it was just a very difficult, awkward, uncomfortable situation. But this little girl, when I went to see her, she was always in her little playpen. She was always holding onto the rails like this. And it always made me think that this little girl's in prison. Because that's how people might do, hold onto the rails and bars like that. And they're always in the same place. Why she was always there was a mystery to me, because she was old enough to walk around. Anyhow, she was always there. She always looked a bit grubby. I could always see the tear stains which had rolled down her cheeks and were now mixing between the snot in between her nose and her mouth. She just looked like she needed to be picked up, washed, cared for, cleaned off and given a bit of attention, love and attention. But she always looked the same. Whenever I saw her, she always looked the same way. And the other thing that I remember about this little girl, what was really conspicuous about her were her eyes. Her eyes were always focused on me. And that was a mystery that I just couldn't fathom, because I knew even at that stage, even though I was inexperienced, that children always look at their parents. But this little girl was always looking at me. I don't know how much longer afterwards, I got a phone call one day from my manager asking me to come into work early. Now, I never get a phone call from my manager asking me to come into work, but this particular day I did, and she told me that there'd been a tragedy on one of my cases and asked me to come in. So I went in, not knowing what had happened. I thought someone had been hurt or whatever, but they were all right. When I saw my manager, she looked at me, she seemed to take a deep breath, and then she mentioned the words. She mouthed the words that made it clear to me that my life was never going to be the same. She told me the little girl had been brutally murdered by her.
What?
Yes, that's what she told me. And what that meant for me was, amongst all other things that was going on, it was that I'd have to go to court and I'd have to give an account of what I'd done and what I hadn't done to safeguard this child. And I'd never been to court before, so I didn't know what to expect, but I knew enough from the people around me that it wasn't going to be a pleasant experience. It certainly wasn't going to be a walk in the park. And then I also knew that there were people around me that kind of distanced themselves from me, because not everyone, but a few people did, because actually one of the worst experiences you can have as a social worker is to be a social worker of a child that's been killed. That's one of the worst experiences. Apart from being killed yourself, that is the next worst experience. So that did make it a highly isolating, lonely experience for me. The other thing I remember at the time was that whilst I was waiting to go to court, it was like, whilst waiting to go to court, it's like this massive, dark, heavy cloud was over me, waiting for this to happen. So that was what it was like on the days and the weeks leading up to court. I just had this thing that something horrible was waiting to happen to me. I went to court. It's in London. It's the Royal Courts of Justice, which is like a big stone building. Picture a cathedral. It's like a cathedral. It's a big stone building. It's massive. The first thing I remember when I got through the electronic security was just how cold it was. Absolutely freezing in the building, because it's a big stone building. But it wasn't just cold in terms of the temperature. It's cold in terms of the atmosphere. Because the courts aren't pleasant places to go to. They're toxic places. They're places of arguments and conflict. Eventually, anyway, I found my way to the place that the court I was meant to be in. I was placed in the witness box. Now, I don't know about you. If you've ever been placed somewhere that you don't want to be placed at, but you want to be anywhere else, I mean anywhere else, well, that's exactly how I felt. You'd know now exactly how I felt, because that's where I wanted. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be anywhere else, but I knew I had to be there because the judge had told me I had to be there. So I knew I had to be there until I was released. Whilst I was in this witness box, I was being asked these horrible questions by these barristers. These barristers were making out, they were spinning the case like I was responsible for the death of this child. If I'd have done that, if I had only done this, if I'd have done that, whatever, this child would still be alive. So that's the way it's been spun. That's the way it's been looked at. And I was this all happened at a time when I'm feeling low, at my lowest ebb. I'm traumatized. I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling experience of loss. I'm not prepared emotionally, psychologically, professionally, in any way for dealing with these questions. So I can't answer these questions. They're all coming to me thick and fast. And I'm feeling like I'm this massive dartboard And these questions are like darts that were just thrown through the air, and they're sticking into me all over the place. Are they hitting me? Are they hurting me personally, physically? No, they're not hurting me physically, but emotionally and psychologically, I'm in the most intense pain. And at one stage, I think, this isn't happening. I'm in denial because I'm in so much pain. And I'm looking around the room thinking, there's got to be someone here who can help me. Someone here has to have a heart. Someone here has to care. But as I look around the room, I don't see anyone's got a heart. I don't see anyone who cares. And I realize at that moment that I'm on my own. No one's going to help me. I'm totally on my own. And as that realization dawns on me, I think of this little girl. Because she was on her own, hoping, begging, pleading, wishing that someone was going to come and save her. And I realized at that moment that the person she was hoping that's going to come and save her was no one else other than me. I was her one hope of being saved. But I couldn't save her because I didn't understand. I wasn't skilled enough. I wasn't experienced enough. I wasn't well enough attuned to understand what she was trying to convey to me, what her facial expressions and body language were trying to convey. So I wasn't able to save her. And that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Now, there were similarities between what was going on for her and what was going on for me. We're both placed in our prospective cells, our prisons that we didn't want to be in. We were both wishing, hoping, begging, pleading that someone was going to come and save us. But you know what? We were both wishing these thoughts in vain because I didn't and wasn't able to save her. And there was no one coming to save me because I'm not meant to be saved. I'm in the witness box. And when you're in the witness box, you are on your own. But that is where the similarities ended. See, what this little girl went through was 1,000,000 times worse than what I went through. I can only begin to think of how terrible her experiences were. But what I can tell you, with no word of a lie, that what I went through in that witness box on that day in that court, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy ever. And that's how bad it was. I don't know how long it went on for. Could have been an hour, could have been 2 hours, could have been more. What I can tell you is when you're in absolute agony, as I was in, 5 minutes feels like an absolute lifetime. Eventually the judge looked at me, glared at me and dismissed me. And when that happened, I wanted to run 1,000,000 miles away from court. I never wanted to see the inside of a court ever again. And that's what I planned to do. But something stopped me. Something said, no, Michael, you're not going to do that. You are going to go back to court again. You're going to go back to court until you get good at giving evidence. Because what happened to you today is never going to be allowed. You are never, ever, ever going to allow anyone to do that to you again. I don't care who it is, not the judge, barrister, anyone. No one is going to do that to you ever again. So that's what I did. I went back to court again, until I got good at giving evidence, until I was able to defend myself, until I was able to write a book about helping others to give evidence at court. You see, my attitude had changed. I knew no one was going to come and help me. I knew that I had to help me. And when my attitude changed, and when I found my voice, I was able to help an awful lot of people. I couldn't save this little girl. It was too late to save this little girl. I wish I'd been able to. But I'm able to save an awful lot of other people from going through the nightmare, the misery, the torment, the horror of going to court and being savaged by barristers. I can save a lot of other people from that because of the experiences I've had. And that is what's made me who I am today. I've also learned a 4-step system. A 4-step system which helps people, gives people the best chance, the very best chance of getting the result they want at court. And that 4-step system is called CALM. I don't know if I have time to talk about it here.
Sure, please, you can go ahead, Michael.
If I do, okay. It's CALM, CALM. The first step in the system is calm, being calm and in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that is imperative when you're going to court. You have to be calm and in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. Most people aren't. I wasn't. Very few people are when you're going to court because you're nervous. But if you're going to give the best evidence, you have to be calm and in control of your thoughts, feelings, and actions, because you're being watched by the judge. And there's other reasons why you have to be calm, and I'll probably come back to that briefly before the end of this discussion. Second step in the process is begins with letter A, and A stands for attitude. You have to have a great attitude when you're giving evidence. When you go into court, you have to have a great attitude. Doesn't matter what the barrister says to you, doesn't matter how badly they behave to you, maintain a great attitude, because the judge is looking at you. The judge wants to know what you're like. The judge wants to know whether you can be relied upon. So having a great attitude is super important when you're going to court and giving evidence. Third step, that's the second step. The third step in the 4-step system begins with letter L. L stands for listening. Had I been a better listener, had I been more attuned, had I been more attentive and thinking about this little girl, and had I even thought about myself from that point of view as well more, I'd have figured out, I hate going to see this family. What must it be like for this little girl living there all the time, 24/7? I didn't think about it because I was partly dealing with how horrible I felt, but I should have been more focused, more attentive, more attuned to her thoughts. And then maybe I'd have been able to pick up something very, very wrong here. So listening is so important, and listening with heart. But also when you're in the witness box, you have to listen to the judge, because the judge will tell you what to do and sometimes ask you questions, and the barristers will definitely ask you questions. If you can't listen, you can't answer the questions. If you can't answer the questions, you can't give good evidence. If you can't give good evidence, you're not likely to get the result that you need. That is the third step in the 4-step system. Fourth and final step begins with letter M. And M stands for both mindfulness and mastery. I'll come to mastery in a minute. You have to be mindful when you're giving evidence. You can't just blurt out the first answer that comes to you when you're asked the question. You have to think about it. And you can't think about it unless you're calm. When you're angry, distressed, you can't think. That part of your brain, the cortex, the higher part of your brain, is literally cut off from you when you're angry or distressed or emotionally in an emotional state that you're not able to respond to it. Yeah. So you have to be calm. You have to have a great attitude. You have to have the ability to listen. If you're not listening, again, you can't answer the questions. And you have to be mindful. So you think about being consistent. Your evidence has to be consistent with everything else you've said, both verbally and in written form. Your evidence has to be in line, consistent with what's in the best interest of the child. And your evidence has to be of a quality, high quality, which raises, it influences and persuades the judge that your evidence is of a higher quality than everyone else's, and therefore should be listened to and valued more highly. You can't do that again unless you're calm, in a calm state. Only when you've done all those 4 things, you've been calm. You've have a great attitude. When you're able to listen effectively, when you are mindful, then you've achieved mastery. And you can't get that overnight. You have to work at it. You achieve that mastery, you're able to give the best evidence. Now, people have all sorts of concerns. We all do. I do. Oh, maybe there's this. What if I'm scared? What if I'm intimidated? What if the barrister does this? What if the judge says this? There's all sorts of concerns. But what I want to tell you is that, and confirm, is that if you listen to and follow those 4 steps, you will achieve mastery. You have to work at it. It's not just going to happen like that. You have to work at it. It's a period, you can do it within a matter of weeks, months, or, several weeks of working it. You can achieve that mastery. I certainly did, and anyone else can also. But you have to work at it. So that, the 4-step system is, really important in terms of anyone going to court, but it's also important and relevant for anyone who's going through any major trauma in their life. And that will help you manage that trauma and come out on top. So that's what I want to say, and I shared why I am the way I am, why I do what I do now with you.
It's amazing, Malcolm. You see, it's a very, very touching story.
Is it paused?
And I love the fact that you
Can you
became
hear me,
the solution you couldn't find around. That's amazing.
Elisha?
That's amazing. A lot
Elisha?
of things are going
Can
on
you
in the
hear me?
world. Are you still with me? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Okay, can you hear
Hi.
me now, Mike?
I can. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So I said that's a very touching story, and I mean it. It's one of the stories that must be heard. Thank you for sharing that with us. Are you still with me? Can you still hear?
Yes, I can. I can hear. I can hear you. I can hear you. I think. It's just that there was a time when I didn't want to share that story. It was too painful. Now I'm only too willing to share it, but it's still an emotional story. Oh God, it's gone again. What's happened?
Okay. So to bring this to an end, Michael, for folks who like to reach out to you, learn more about everything we've discussed so far, or ask you questions, how can that be possible? Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I said for folks who like to reach out to you, ask you questions, or learn more about everything we've discussed, or even make a purchase of your book, how can that be possible?
Right. They can contact me. I can give you. They can contact me on Facebook. It's Michael Watson on Facebook. They can contact me on Instagram. My my Instagram handle is Michael240656. They can contact me on LinkedIn. Again, I'm Michael Watson, but I've also got an Incredible Witness newsletter on LinkedIn. And I can even give you my my mobile number. So if people wanted to phone or anything, I'll give that to you now. I know I'm in the UK, so it would be +44 7 +44 7960 07063.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful one. Thank you so very much, Michael, for sharing that very touching and inspiring stories with. It means a whole lot. That's gonna be the end of the show, man. Thank you for coming. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much for having me. Thank you so much. All right. Take care.